Welcome to One to One. I'm Priscilla Nwikpo, and I've caught up with Biola Alabi on her trip to London to promote her new film, The Banana Island Ghost. Biola Alabi is of Nigerian heritage, born and raised in America, but now living and working in Nigeria. She began her career as a businesswoman, then worked in television, where she became a managing partner of her own production company. She has now produced a highly successful film, Banana Island Ghost, and there is even talk of a move into politics. Biola, welcome. How are you today?
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
But let me start first with you, being born in the US, and then you moved back to Nigeria. Yes. What was that like for you, going back to Nigeria?
It was different as an adult because I had gone to Nigeria as a young child. I had lived in Nigeria for a couple of years when I was younger. But going in as an adult and going into work was totally it was nothing I would have imagined. But I think because I had lived in different places before I moved back, I lived in Asia, I worked in Korea. So moving back, I knew it was going to be different from the US, and I knew I needed to expect things differently. But I think like whenever you go into a place, it's still a culture shock. It's a culture shock from the work element of it, from sort of engaging people. So, but it was great. I mean, I loved the opportunity. It was an opportunity to really tell more African stories.
Now, you made mention of work just then.
Yes.
You're a businesswoman.
Yes.
You've won several awards in that area of your life. Tell us a little bit about that.
I started out really after uni trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and then before you know it, these things always happen. You end up somewhere you didn't expect, and I ended up in television. I ended up working at Sesame Street, the world's leading children's TV program, and working on co-productions, so doing co-productions around the world. That brought me to Africa, brought me to South Africa, Tanzania, Kenya, eventually Nigeria.
What do we call you, a global citizen?
And then after that, I mean, while I was doing this, I really wanted to do Sesame Street in Nigeria because I'm from Nigeria. I felt like Nigeria had a huge young children population, and I knew the benefits of early childhood education. And so in doing that, I got approached by DSTV, and that's how I ended up moving back to Nigeria. So for me, it's been like full circle, I guess.
Yeah,
Yes.
You know, DSTV is a huge platform right across Africa.
It is.
And of course, with DSTV comes Africa Magic.
Yes.
And then there was the whole Big Brother thing.
Yes.
Big Brother,
yes.
hugely successful.
Yes.
But then it does attract a negative criticism because the housemates of Big Brother Africa are renowned for being extremely expressive, no holds barred, and very out there. Yeah. And so they're criticized for having a negative impact on society. Well, what are your thoughts on that?
Obviously, the biggest thing about young people being in a house together is there's issues of sex. And so besides that, sort of like, how do you talk about something other than just the sexual element of the show? And so really trying to look at, okay, what are some of the social things about this, actually some of the social consciousness stuff about this show? So first of all, I had to go watch the show and learn more about the show. And what I thought was really interesting about Big Brother Africa was that it had participants from so many different countries. Absolutely. And so Africans were actually using this to learn more about each other. And if you realize, I think at the same time, and you look at the same time of what happened with Africa Magic, there's been a huge explosion of just much more understanding, and even like colloquialism going across the continent. So people using each other's jargon, each other's slang. Each other's dances. Yeah. And it became a huge place to showcase African musicians. So every week during the shows, there was always a DJ, which had to be from a different country. There was also always a musician that had to be from a different country. So every week we showcased different musicians from across the continent. And I kept on feeling like there were so many things that weren't happening before that we could do differently. We brought in social issues around blood donation, around malaria awareness. We partnered with one campaign. There was so much more we could do besides people taking showers naked.
Yeah, but then, you know, those social issues did not take off as well as or as much as the people taking showers naked or the sexual aspect of you know, housemates being in confined space together. That was the runaway conversation, as it were.
That is what makes news. That is what makes news, and I totally understand that.
But then what did you guys do in order to curb that? Or were there any things that you could do to have more of more focus on the positive impact that you wanted to achieve.
Of course, which is why we introduced all these other elements. We campaigned with, with the One campaign, which is really about how can Africa feed itself going forward, changing these people from not really just being sort of these cultural pariahs into actually change agents. How do you do that? The other thing too was that Big Brother Africa became a lightning rod for talking about issues that we normally don't talk about. Okay. One of them was issues around sexual consent.
Yes.
What does consent mean? How do you have consent? And then also we had issues where there was physical abuse on the show and how we dealt with that because the whole world was watching us. What happens when this happens? There was issues of violence. So we were constantly dealing with issues that were that happen in our society, but in this micro space, and we had to address them. We brought in mental health experts. Mental health was something Africans never even mentioned. Psychologists, anyway, we tried to bring in all these elements, and I felt that we were dealing with real world issues in a way that Africans hadn't dealt with them before. We were addressing them. I mean, people were showing up outside our offices saying this housemate has to be evicted today because he slapped someone, and really trying to analyze. I mean, you have no idea how many times I've seen videos of people that they touched, that they slapped, that they not, and really making those decisions.
Were there no rules to the housemates before they went in? Wasn't there some kind of guidance about what you can and can't do in the house?
Yes. There were always rules. I mean, there's a rule book, there's Big Brother, there's everything that's happening all at once. But what happens is, I mean, people are in a confined space for 90 days. After 30 days, after 40 days.
And that's the other thing. Why does it have to be 90 days? 90 days is a pretty long time.
We're in the business of making television. 90 days is a good amount of time in this 24-hour cycle of filling airtime. I can't lie about that.
It was all about that. You've been a businesswoman, highly successful at what you did. The TV was going very well too. What then makes you leave the comfortable world of television to go into the challenging world of making a film?
Because human beings are crazy,
No,
like people are like, I love doing this, I know what to do, I'm comfortable doing this, but oh no, let me go do something I totally know nothing about or I'm not comfortable.
Right.
And people kept on pitching scripts to me. I kept on saying no. This particular collaborator, I had seen his work. He had pitched me a television series. I had given him a lot of feedback. They had gone and produced the series. I really enjoyed the series. I felt like it was really breaking ground in Nollywood and in Nigeria. It was a series about a number of young people really trying to battle with what it's like to either get, especially women, it was called Before 30, and sort of this pressure put on Nigerian women or African women or women all over the world that before 30 you have to get married. And so I felt that they really did a great job of telling that story. And so when they pitched the script to me, this was the third script they had pitched to me, and I said, fine.
And then you leaped in.
Yes, I did.
You threw everything in there.
I did.
Okay, so you're in the film world now.
Yes.
And one of your...
But still do TV. I still love TV.
You still do your TV. Well, that's good. Yes. But, last year you had your big breakaway release, as it were.
Yes.
The Banana Island Ghost. Yes. What inspired that film?
Yes.
Because it was quite unusual for a Nigerian film. We don't often do ghosts.
Yes.
In our films.
Which is why I loved it. The minute I heard it, I loved it. The minute I knew it was going to be a different type of film from the stereotypical sort of ghost film that Nigerians are known for. I really felt that I feel like it's important to do things that change the narrative, that create a different type of conversation, especially if you're in the field and you're telling people that we need to do things differently. Sometimes in a way you have to lead and show people what you're talking about.
How did Nollywood welcome you with your American background,
sure,
your extensive TV experience and all of that, and coming in? Did they welcome you with open arms? Great, Biola, welcome, we love you. Or was it a case of, who does she think she is?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, I think a little bit of both because when I came in through a big organization. I mean, we were the big bad wolf. So it was a lot of really telling people that we were going to do things differently. There were people that said, you're one of them. And I'm like, I can't be one of them. I'm one of you. I look like you. Or mean, it was sort of a lot of back and forth. What people are always responding to is the unknown. It's not necessarily you. And I think sort of once we got through that and people understood that we were going to be partners in creating and forging a new way forward and creating these new television channels that were going to tell new stories, that were really going to catapult them to the rest of Africa. I think once people started to see that and that we began that journey, the relationship changed. But I think in the beginning, obviously, you're also sort of their past relationships, people's misunderstandings before, and you have to mend and build. And I think for me, that was a great opportunity. So when I came into this space, because I had done so much work in building relationships over the last 7 years in my role as a head of
the DSTV.
It was so much easier for people to say, well, welcome, how do we help you?
Today we're speaking to Biola Alabi. You got down to making Banana Island Ghost. How did you find it, working with the different actors, a different way of thinking, different ways of doing things?
Just like everywhere, making a film is challenging. I mean, you have a short amount of time, you have a very strict schedule, and you're trying to fit in as many shots as possible a day. I mean, you're trying to shoot as many pages a day. So for me, just being there for the director and watching the director go through this was his first film. So this was all sort of like you're just really trying to help the person along the way and really try to provide the right resources for them to tell the story. But what was really important for me was also the roles that we were creating and different roles that we were creating for women. So leading ladies are not that's not new in Nollywood, but really having a strong leading lady that actually did action, that sort of threw herself into it. She threw herself around. She was on the floor. She was rolling around. I mean, really seeing that type of character. And also the fact that she was curvy. She was loud. She was rambunctious.
She was horizontally challenged.
She's curvy, I would like to say. But I just felt like it was something that you weren't really used to seeing. I mean, we've modeled a lot of our looks and what we think is beautiful on sort of classical Western looks. And I think that it was great to just sort of have this amazing woman and be funny and be just a fighter, carry this film.
It was also really nice to see God.
Yes.
Dressed completely in his African attire.
Yes.
The CGIs in that film were particularly good when you consider the standards of Nigerian films. How easy or challenging was it to achieve that?
It was really challenging, but also rewarding because it was done by a Nigerian. It was done locally. Everything we did on that film was done in Nigeria. And that was rewarding. That made us feel good about what we were doing. I think with any VFX project, it's just time. I mean, we were really racing against the clock. And so it was really time consuming. For me, it was really about just also seeing what we have at home and how we can exploit that and show the world and really invite people to come and tell their stories in Nigeria.
The woman is the center of the world at the moment. She's the center of every conversation. The Me Too, the stand-up campaign is something that is huge around the world. Is Nollywood also having a conversation about Me Too and stand-up?
I believe so. I mean, I believe that it's different for us. I mean, the reason why is because if you look at some of the leading figures in our industry in Nigeria, it's actually women. So women have been calling the shots when it comes to television, when it comes to film in Nigeria for a very long time. And so you don't really have...
But then does that mean they don't go through the same things?
I mean, I think they go through a different challenge, and I think that's not unique to women anywhere in the world. And I think anywhere where women are raising capital, those are challenging environments. Because also one of the things you don't have is you don't have the same relationships that men tend to have, and then tend to give each other. They sort of tend to be able to write checks for each other. They either went to school together, they grew up together, they hang out together, and so these conversations are much more fluid and organic to have. While every time a woman goes out to raise money, it is sort of an appointment, it's an event. It's not sort of something that happens because we're hanging out at the spa, we're hanging out at the hairdressers. It's because you're literally, I've scheduled a meeting, I've come to meet you, I've propped up what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
And so the conversation is automatically extremely formal. And I think that's the challenge that we have in our industry. But if you look at the number of women behind the camera, women in front of the camera, I think that disproportionately you will find that Nollywood is leading in that conversation.
But then Nigeria is very much a male-dominated society, and just in other areas of business, I know that there is the whole sexual innuendo. There's always some form of inappropriate sexual conversation.
Yes,
surely it must be happening in Nollywood.
In Nollywood, I'm sure it's happening. I'm sure it's happening. Obviously, because it's not happening on my sets, it didn't happen when I ran a big organization. The kind of conversations you have is still people just not expecting you to be the boss. I think those are the conversations. But when it comes to sexual innuendos, sexual assault, I think these are voices that we still need to find, and those voices need to rise to the top. We need to create a safe environment for women to come forward. Women need to know that when they do come forward, they will be heard. For someone like Angelina Jolie not to feel like she could be heard if she said something. Uma Thurman, these are the highest paid women in America. That means that people have the economic means to come forward. And they didn't.
Yes.
So when you are talking about a place like Nigeria and Nollywood, we're talking about people need economic means, they need legal means, they need to also have the right support systems in place.
Within your organization and what you are doing as a woman who's outspoken, do you have any plans, for instance, to perhaps educate more, to enlighten more about these issues? And what are those plans?
We're currently doing that. So one of the things we do is we mentor women, we mentor men as well, because this is not happening in isolation. No. You need both people to understand what's happening. We're also trying to create an environment where people in the industry can actually come forward and their voices be heard. So I'm actually planning to have a meeting with some of the strong female executive producers and some of the producers to say, what can we be doing to make sure that young women can come forward? One of the things is the casting couch.
Yeah.
The casting couch is really all but gone in Nollywood. It's something that doesn't happen anymore. And the reason why is because women are creating their own platforms. Women are creating their own voices. If at any time you go to the box office in Nigeria and you look at who are the executive producers, who are the producers of these films, I'm telling you, 5 out of 5, they're women. So you can go through your career in Nollywood without ever having to deal with an abusive male.
Really?
You can.
I read a story on social media recently of a young man who talked about what happened to him. And right at the bottom of it, he says, but then who do I complain to? Because men are also suffering, going through the same thing. And you just mentioned there, creating this environment, not just for women, but also for men. What in particular are you doing for the young men? It's a male-dominated society. Where do they go and who do they speak to and how do they own up to having been treated in that way?
I think for me, really, what I can do is every time I have the opportunity to talk about what I do, every time I have an opportunity to reach out to people, really giving voice to the fact that there is an issue in our society. Sexual violence in Nigeria is one of the highest in the world.
Correct.
And of course, women are most likely the victims, but that doesn't mean that it's not happening to men. So really, how do we create more platforms in ways we talk about this? At the same time, using film as a powerful tool to talk about these and address these issues.
Not only are we talking about sexual assault, abuse, the woman is the center of our conversations. We're also speaking about our ethnicity right across the globe. Do we see changes happening in Hollywood, for instance? Black Panther is the movie right now. Do you think that Black Panther is going to make that impact, that's suddenly going to bring that change for Nollywood?
I think that there's been a movement in the way that people see Black talent and people cast Black talent. Over the last 10 years, Black talent has gone to being, no, we don't want Black talent because we're trying to create global products. That's how Hollywood was seeing it. We need to create global blockbusters. And the number one thing we need to do is think about China. So at that point, the casting was, will this sell in China? If it will sell in China, yes. If it's not going to sell in China, no. So at that point, there was only like a few Black actors and actresses that sold in China. So that was like if you were Will Smith, if you were Denzel Washington, if you were Kevin Hart. And so you had amazing actor and actresses not working. And in the last 5 years, we've also seen another shift with people like Shonda Rhimes creating these powerful leading roles for women. So people that are coming up, their voices are being heard. And this is really exciting. And so for me, I think that with a film like Black Panther, it just goes to show that good story always sells. Doesn't really matter where you are.
But are we going to see the change though in terms of, are we going to see more Black people in movies? Are we going to see them being paid more, the women for instance?
I don't think that this all happens in one day. I think that this is sort of a journey we're on, as long as we are consistent and persistent. Remember, once people sort of get comfortable, once a few people get comfortable, we can't stop the message. We can't stop the focus. So for example, a young woman like Jennifer Lawrence decides in Hollywood that she wants to be paid the same thing as her male colleague. That had never been heard of before. Julia Roberts used to be in a bunch of movies with male leads, and she was never paid as much as that. She always got paid less.
She was well paid.
And she was one of the highest paid actresses. So for a young woman like Jennifer Lawrence to be saying, I want to get paid a certain amount, that means that there's something happening in our environment. There's something we're serving in the water, and we're empowering young women to ask for what they're worth.
But you're quite an activist, and you did mention there about women being in that position of being part of policymaking and all of that. So are we likely to see you, transiting from your executive role, movie role, and now going into politics?
So when this sort of started to come up, I've said no, because I'd never been interested in politics. I'd always said no. I mean, what I love to do is build companies. What I love to do is create jobs. What I love to do is do what can propel the economy to grow. And so for me, it was always, the answer was an easy no. But this keeps coming up, and I know that for women to continue to make an impact, we have to be part of where the rules are being made. We have to be part of policy. We have to be part of moving the agenda forward. So what I would love to do is really support the right people in politics. I love to lend my voice to the right people in politics. So that's really what I'm focused on when it comes to politics now.
Okay. Well, it's been great speaking with you. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.